To make sure this is live. Public, publish. There we go. We should be live right about now, and it's probably the best time to be live because we're back again for another live stream. And live streams are what we like to do after the Champions League games, World Cup games, European Championship games. And I thought, you know what, this season let's bring it back for Champions League nights as well. And we're going to be talking about all the games in the Champions League this week going. So match day 1 is back again. Danny, it's good to see you, my friend. Sani, it's good to see you, my friend. How did you both find this week's match day 1 of the Champions League? Sani going first, besides Manchester United, of course.
I mean, it's good to hear the Champions League anthem back. Thank God Man United are back in it instead of Anyway, right, I'm not a
There's nothing wrong with that sound, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that sound.
There's no wrong with it, but when you're trying to win the big one, you know, it is. But no, it's good. And there's some big teams, obviously, in the Champions League. So it's good. And also, because of the international break, which can be quite draining sometimes, it's good to have the proper competition back.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things. Danny, how is it watching the Champions League these days in terms of being the European Championship champion from a West Ham point of view?
Well, look, just to amplify, I hate international breaks. I think they need to be shortened. I think they need to be looked at and even gotten rid of. And I'd rather the qualification stage be its own tournament in itself. We'll have a summer of a qualification tournament and then have a summer of an actual tournament. I think that might work a little bit better than, you know, every 6 or 7 weeks having to stop all football just to bring together some of the worst decisions Southgate can fathom and try and see if we can beat a Ukrainian side. But look, yeah, it's good to be back with the Champions League. As a West Ham fan, I think in recent years, I'm going to be completely honest with you, I haven't even bothered watching the Champions League. It hasn't interested me, but for some reason, this year's one has, and it's given me that sort of looking at the matches, looking at the group stages. There's some interesting matchups there, and I definitely think it's one that's worth watching. And I think this week has only shown that all the stars are here to come out to play, and it's going to be probably one of the best tournaments in the last couple of years, hopefully.
All the stars are closer, nothing closer than Manchester United's result against Bayern Munich. But Sani, let's start with this one. In terms of going into the game, would you have taken a 4-3? And after the game, would you have taken a 4-3? So before and after, what were your thoughts on the result?
Before, I actually thought Bayern were going to win 3-1. So then afterwards, looking at 4-3, you're like, okay, fine. Like, it's not too bad. But it also does say, you know, a lot about where we are as a club, that we're talking about, you know, are you happy with losing, and are you happy with losing more gracefully and more competitively, which is kind of an indictment of where we are as a club. But listen, considering other English teams have been absolutely humiliated by Bayern Munich, I'm looking at Spurs and looking at the Arsenal. 4-3 isn't too bad, especially considering how people were saying, oh, we're going to get smashed by Bayern. Bayern haven't been that good this season. If people watch Bundesliga, you can see Bayern have not been the same Bayern. So it's early on in the competition, 4-3. Listen, I'll take it. The team's not going to be that demoralised going into the weekend against Burnley. So I'll take it.
Yeah, there's some positives in that game as well. Rasmus Højlund, Serge Reguilon coming into the side, Casemiro with 2 goals. But I just kind of wanted to pick on Andre Onana before moving on to Bayern Munich, especially.
Leave him alone.
Danny, you're a coach. You used to be a goalkeeper. What's your thoughts on that first goal that he conceded? And
the problem is,
he was a problem for that first goal. That's all I'm saying.
The problem is, and he amplifies it in his interview that he did the other day, the goalkeeper is technically the fault to every single goal that goes in. Yeah. If the ball goes in the back of the net, it has beaten the goalkeeper, which means that it's gone past 11 players, including the goalkeeper, into the back of the net. When you look at a mistake like that, it makes me remember a young David De Gea who's first joined United. He's been brought into a side to play in a system which is still ever developing. If a ball goes in between his arms or through his legs or whatever the mistake might be, that is one mistake. If we looked at stats for, I don't know who your right back was today, you might be able to help me. How many missed tackles Dalot didn't make during that game? And the percentage of maybe the mistakes that every individual player on that Man United pitch made today, they would be much more, or they'd be a much higher percentage than Onana's one mistake. And I think everyone looks at a mistake as from a goalkeeper in such a negative light because it goes in the back of the goal and you lose a point for that and you're in a deficit. But at the end of the day, he's still like learning. Do you know what I mean? He's still an ever-growing goalkeeper, fairly inexperienced in terms of high-level quality football. especially with on the biggest stage of the Champions League with a big club like Man United, you've got to give him some stick. So you've got to give him
I was going to say, I was like, Danny, where's that coming from?
You can't give him any stick. You've got to give him some leeway. So that's my thoughts and opinions on it.
Man, the way you were dressing that up, I was like, oh man, he's gonna get it. And then boom, I was like, oh shit, you're giving him stick. Like, what the hell?
You smacked it down. That's what you did there. It's like a big.
He did all right though. Like after that goal, if we're being honest, he actually was all right. So I don't know why. I think people, they just get onto his back too much because it's what Danny's saying is so right. Because when De Gea came in, we had Van der Sar going away the season before. Everyone's like, oh my god, De Gea's making too many mistakes, and then. It's fine. The season after he came into it, and then let's be honest, for a couple of seasons he was saving us so many times. So, people just need to be patient, really, like Danny said.
Yeah, it's true. Because with this Man United side as well, with the 10 players and Harry Maguire that we've got out of the side as well, we did put up a good fight in that game. And unfortunately for Bayern Munich, they kind of showed their vulnerabilities in match day one for them. And I was just kind of looking at them thinking, they really went into second gear after 3-1, and you're just kind of there like they can turn it up if they need to. Obviously, Tell scoring the winning goal, which it turned out to be 4-3 in the end. But it kind of goes to show that they can be beaten, this Bayern Munich team. And I was someone who was thinking, oh yeah, Harry Kane will bring them into the limelight. They'll be a lot better. But I do need to talk about Jamal Musiala, and I do need to talk about his graceful performance on the European stage for match day one. And Sani, I need to talk to you about Jamal Musiala. Is he one of the best young players to watch in world football right now?
Oh, yeah. I think that's been the case for a while, to be honest with you. I mean, we all know
I'm talking about like all positions, top 3, that type of thing.
Top 3?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about him where I'm like, he's a very talented player, but top 3, can I see that? For me, if someone says top 3 young players, I'm like, can this boy potentially win the Ballon d'Or? I don't think he can.
That's what a lot of people will be saying as well. Could they make him into a Ballon d'Or contender?
I don't think so. And I'll be honest with you. I think Musiala had a good game, but Leroy Sané, man, like he has been very, very good for Bayern Munich so far this season. So I know obviously he's not the same age bracket as Musiala, but there's other players in Bayern that are performing really well. But Musiala, top 3, I don't think so personally. I mean, I know Danny's raring to go on this one as well, but I don't think so. Top 3 personally.
No,
agree or disagree, Danny?
Not top 3 at all. I mean, you look at the standard of young players in world football now, it's a different kettle of fish in terms of people are crying out for a new Messi and Ronaldo. And I think there's only one star boy that people should be talking about. And I know he scored a tap in, and it's a good segue into the next thing. But I think you've got to look at Jude Bellingham as the number one. If there's ever going to be a young Ballon d'Or winner, I think Jude nicks it. I think if Jude's performances keep up, and he's able to take the Galacticos up to another Champions League, you've really got to be looking at Jude Bellingham for a top award this year.
I was watching the game earlier today, and Union Berlin was so resilient for the whole game. They were defending, they were slowing the game down. The Bernabeu was getting frustrated, and it looks like they've got their new hero, their new number 5, JB5, as opposed to JB22. I'm really excited about what Jude Bellingham's had to offer so far for Real Madrid, and now we've seen it on the Champions League stage as well. And if we are going to be talking about one of the top 3 players, I think he's probably one of the best players on form right now in world football, Jude Bellingham. And Sani, I wanted to ask you, with all of these striker issues with Real Madrid as well, we're talking about the amazing midfield that they have. Is this where we're going to see the best of Jude Bellingham lifting himself up to be? We saw at Borussia Dortmund, he takes a lot of ownership onto himself now, playing as a forward player. And we saw that today in the number 10 role. Do you think there's going to be less pressure on Jude Bellingham now, or more pressure because he's scoring goals week in, week out for Jude Bellingham?
I mean, pressure. I don't think that pressure phases this boy. I mean, he was carrying Birmingham City when he was there. They needed him, because if he didn't play for them as he was playing, they wouldn't get relegated, and financially they would be in ruins. Dortmund, he was there doing his thing. England, he's great. The thing with Jude Bellingham, his best position is further afield. It's never been in the pivot. He's not that sort of player where he can be influential there. He's more influential at the top of the pitch. And the problem with Real Madrid is, in that game, as we saw against Union Berlin, they have no cutting edge. They had so many chances. That's, people forget that. Like, they're thinking, oh, Real Madrid are shit. But the thing is, they have a lot of chances. They just don't have a striker really to put it away. And there's so many teams in football that need a striker. I mean, there's one in the Premier League, Chelsea. They have a striker. I'm telling you now, the way their season so far has been evaluated, it'd be a lot different if they had a striker. And I think Real Madrid are going to be in that same boat. Can Jude Bellingham keep this up? He's that good that he can, but is it going to be enough for Real Madrid to win the Champions League? I don't think so. They need a strike. They need goals elsewhere. You can't just rely on Jude Bellingham to bail you out, because eventually the magic will fade, because he's only human.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, with Jude Bellingham going into this side with Real Madrid, it's like he's been playing there for years. And for someone of his age, what, 20 years old? He's still 19, 20 years old. He's
20,
still 20.
yeah.
20. Him and Musiala are going to be running the midfield game in European football for years to come. And I'm looking forward to it because I'm of the opinion in terms of the fact that I think Musiala will grow and grow and grow into how well this boy can be. And Bellingham is already at that level with Real Madrid. Musiala will look to compete with him going forward. So let's see what happens with Real Madrid later on in the Champions League. Next game we're going to have to talk about is Arsenal's return to the Champions League and having a very convincing win against PSV, 4-0 at home. Danny, talk to me about Arsenal and talk to me about how you think they can actually be. Could they be a surprising package in the Champions League? Could they upset a few people, or is that lack of experience going to cost them down the line? Let's hear your thoughts on that.
Listen, when you have a team which have been so hungry for Champions League football, and it's been a bit of a mockery, even when they were getting the Champions League football, to you only want to come fourth, or no, you don't want to win the league, just like that fourth place trophy. Like to be in a position where they're in a different pot, so they're in a higher pot than a lot of teams. They've got potentially a very easy group in terms of the teams they're playing against. They've got to be looking for all points. They've got to be looking for maximising all points. I think they played PSV last year in the other competition and struggled, to be quite frank. I was speaking to a lot of Arsenal fans over the week, and they said that, look, this could be a really tough game for them. So for them to go into that game with the atmosphere behind them, look, I was at the stadium earlier today. There was such an aura around Champions League football being back in London, and especially with the weather. It was pouring down with rain, but there were people with smiles on their faces. They were buzzing. No PSV fans would get into anyone. They were all around us. But for me, I think Arsenal have really got to look at this competition with a strong attitude and go, look, if we can get through this group stage in a really healthy position, other teams are going to struggle. We could come up against some really potential good round of 16 teams. You know, you get a good, nice, easy quarter-final, and then you're in a semi-final position. So I think they've got to be looking to get into the semi-finals at least in terms of who they've got in the squad.
That's a big claim for Arsenal getting to the semi-finals, man. That's a very big claim.
Yeah, but have you seen the teams that they've? I mean, I think it's possible only because, although this is the final year in the Champions League in this format, the teams that are in the competition right now, yes, I know further on in the season, you know, the better teams do come to the top. You know, the cream rises to the top. There aren't that many strong sides. When Arsenal were making it back in the day in the Champions League, there were some bloody good sides. They always used to come up against Bayern. That Bayern team was a hell of a lot better than it is now. You get teams like Dortmund who were absolutely fantastic. Those sort of teams, they're not around as much anymore. Barcelona, I don't think, I mean, they have, you know, I know they've got a nice group as well, but again, I'm not convinced. Real Madrid, they're not the super club that they were 10 years ago. So Arsenal, like Danny says, if they get a nice draw, it's very possible. The only thing that comes against them is their history in this competition. I know history, obviously, you shouldn't look into it too much, but their record in the Champions League is a disgrace. Even when they had a very good squad, I'm talking back when the Invincibles were around, the furthest they made it, other than 05-06 when they made a final, was the quarterfinals. They never made it past there. So let's say
they made the semi-finals against Man United, and that's when G-Sam Park dunked on them.
Yeah, 2008-9 season. But that was like the Emirates era. I wouldn't really count that as that same side, you know, with the likes of Henry. Henry wasn't there. Perez, all those sort of greats, they weren't there. So I think it's possible. If they get a nice draw, like Danny says, it's very much possible. Because this PSV side, they're missing some key players. Like Sangare obviously isn't here as well. So
Xavi Simmons went back as well.
It's a nice draw for Arsenal. They could go far, but I don't think they'll win it.
Noni Madueke, another player that I know Danny's appreciative of. He wasn't at PSV, he's back at Chelsea, fortunately. But yeah, great shout for Arsenal. I think with Arsenal, they're going to have a fun time in this group, like we've both said as well. But another team in another group, I think they're going to have a fun time, is Napoli. Napoli winning 2-1 against Braga today away from home in that game. They got a last-minute kind of own goal by Niakite as well. But with Napoli, Sani, we've seen in this season so far, they're not as good as when they had Spalletti as manager, and with Rudy Garcia as their new manager, they're kind of hit and miss so far. And are we expecting Napoli to mount a quarter-final charge like they did last season, or is it still early days for this young Napoli side? What do you think?
I'll be very, very surprised if they make the quarterfinals. I don't think they're as good as people think. I mean, Spalletti obviously going was big. They've been pretty poor in Serie A so far. I know obviously it's early doors, so anything can happen, especially in knockout football, but I don't fancy them to make it to the quarterfinals. I think the better teams will beat them. And I mean, Braga, if they lost today, then I'm not going to lie, Rudy Garcia would be under a lot of pressure because he hasn't had a good start to Serie A as well. But I mean, when you make decisions like taking off Kvaratskhelia, in a game and then drawing 2-2 away. It's
Mm.
not a good sign. But who knows? You never know with football. There's always one team in the Champions League that makes that not fairy tale run, but surprising run. There were a few teams last season because let's be honest, who thought both Milan clubs were going to make it that far? Not many. So the draw opens up. You get a nice run. We could see Napoli, but for me, I don't think they make it to the quarterfinals.
Danny, I wanted to ask you as well with Napoli's kind of detail in attack this season. I don't know if we've really seen that as much promise as we did under Spalletti last season. Are you kind of worried in terms of Serie A teams kind of falling behind? Because AC Milan were unconvincing yesterday, who we'll get onto later. But with Napoli being the champions of Italy, they've kind of, in a way, regressed. I know they've won, but they won against a Braga side who they really should be beaten on paper anyway. But is there cause for concern for Napoli this season?
Listen, I think Napoli had you can't deny the season they had last year. Yeah, every player is firing. Every player is being considered one of the best players in the world, and they've come together in this wonderland of an idea of, look, we haven't won the league since the likes of Maradona. That's pushing them behind them. I think that honeymoon period of their success is now finished. I think if you haven't got your star players to turn to in moments of need, you're going to struggle, and you're really going to struggle. Look, no goal from Osimhen tonight, no goal from Kvaratskhelia, no goal from anyone on the pitch of a notable value. And I look at that Napoli lineup, and I go, is that a team which is one of the best in the world? And I say no. And I even look at saying, is that the best Italian team in the world in the moment? And I say no as well. I think obviously I don't know what their league form is like currently, but just through looking at it, I think there are definitely better teams on paper. And I can just look, they're fifth in the league, 4 games, 7 points. Inter on 12 points, Juventus on 10, AC Milan on 9. So the teams which have performed poorly last year are now sort of showing their relevance again. And it reminds me a little bit of how people were suggesting that Arsenal were this world-beating team last year, when in actual reality, you looked at Man City's results at the beginning of the season and they weren't performing well. And if Man City wouldn't have gotten those vital few points, and you made Arsenal win at West Ham last year and get those extra 2 points, do Arsenal win the league? If that's the case, if other teams perform badly and they perform well, is that the caveat to that? So I think Napoli are in the same position. They've got to really look at their team and go, look, yes, we've had a really good season, but that's probably not because of the squad in general. It's because of a really few good performances. So yeah, I think they're going to really struggle this year. Union Berlin are a very good side. I'd be very interested to see how they come up against them in home and away. Away in Germany against the Union Berlin side will be a very tough trip for anyone to go to. So yeah, I think they're going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Another Italian side that we can get onto is Inter Milan, and Inter Milan played away to Real Sociedad today. Another convincing performance from them. It's one of those things that they drew 1-1, but it's the fact that they're still a new side, Real Sociedad. I mean, Real Sociedad are convincing, not Inter Milan, but Real Sociedad debut in the Champions League for the first time since 2014, if I remember correctly. And they're a side where I think Inter Milan, who I personally said at the beginning of the season, should still be competing in the Champions League. They should be one of the favourites after getting to the final. I know they're missing Onana. I know they're missing 1 or 2 other players, Dzeko leaving respectively. But Danny, back to you again in terms of Serie A, in terms of what they've got going on. With Inter Milan, is this cause for concern moving forward? Because they've got no Dzeko, they've got no, well, Lukaku's kind of gone, but Marcus Thuram and Lautaro Martinez are going to be probably one of the main few players in Serie A that actually can challenge for 20, 30 goals across all competitions, along with Victor Osimhen, for example. But I think Inter Milan will go through this group, but is it cause for concern too early? Are they going to be contenders again for the Champions League, or around quarterfinals, round of 16? What are you thinking about this one for Inter Milan?
If they go through the groups, then fantastic. Let them live, let them land. But for me, I look at that team again, and I thought Sociedad were going to nick it tonight. I thought a team like Sociedad, with the players they've got in the form they are, it's a vibrant side which play really good football. And I think Inter Milan and the Italian leagues at the moment, I think they aren't adaptable to the speed of the world game. I think people always suggest that the Premier League is the best league in the world, but I think it's because of the speed of it. If you look at the Italian teams and how they play, it's a lot slower. It's a lot more patient in their build-up, and they rely a little bit more on their tactical understanding of the game to try and get them through victories, try and get themselves the perfect opportunity. And teams like Sociedad will catch you on the counter, will be really clever in just being in a low block, pushing forwards, and then hoping to get something on the counter. Who are the other 2 teams in their group, if you don't mind me, just if you've got it up?
Benfica and Salzburg.
Yeah, RB Salzburg won 2-0 today against Benfica. And Benfica were home as well, which is crazy.
Down 10 men,
Salzburg
though.
always a really good team, despite their background and their nation. Like they're always one that's going to put in a shift. I'd imagine Simic has probably come up with a goal. The young Croatian, what a player he is.
And he assisted as well today. Player to watch, Rocco Simic.
One of the biggest players in the young game to watch is Simic. The way he moves on and off the ball, he's got something in him, and I think it wouldn't be too long before a team picks him up in the Premier League too. So, yeah, look, teams like that are going to come up against Inter Milan, and they're going to rip them to pieces. I think even Benfica, especially if they've lost today, in the next couple of rounds, they're going to have a bit of fight about them. And I think Inter Milan, they're going to have to sort of look at themselves in the mirror and go, look, what are we going to do here to be able to progress? What can we do differently to beat the other teams in their shape and in their positions? Otherwise, they're going to really struggle.
Yeah, it's true. Patrick, I can see you in the comments. I just can't comment back for something. I think StreamYard has locked me out, so I do apologize. But we are reading your comments and we can see what you're talking about in terms of Arsenal, in terms of what we've got going on. So hopefully we've got more people watching the stream as well, which is great. And now we're on to Benfica and Sani. I wanted to ask you, again, Benfica losing at home. And after they had such an impressive performance last season, they are that selling club that we see every single season, letting the player leave. This time it's Gonzalo Ramos going to PSG, who we'll talk about later as well. But that red card by Antonio Silva on the goal line as well. Sometimes I think it's a bit of stupidity because I'm like, okay, you can get a red card, you're on the goal line, or you can concede a goal. If you then concede a goal, you're 1-0 down, but you're still on 11 men. If you're on 10 men and a goal down, it looks a bit stupid in hindsight, but can we expect much from RB Salzburg being, again, one of these streets we'll never forget type European teams? We've seen that with Monaco in 2017. We saw that with Borussia Dortmund in 2013, Ajax in 2019 as well. Could we see RB Salzburg challenging the elites of European football? What do you think, Sani?
I'm not too sure because although they do have a few good players, and obviously Danny mentioned Simic, I think this game was one of them ones where I just think Benfica just weren't at the races. And it kind of fell nicely. After that red card, I just thought Benfica haven't got a chance here. Because when you're down to 10 men in the Champions League, you got a team that can pop the ball around. Like, their midfield, RB Salzburg, is really good. Like, they've got a player in there that I wish Man United signed, but obviously we didn't. And that is Koku, because obviously he plays with Benfica, but he is a player that I was looking forward to in, like, performing in this game. But RB Salzburg's midfield just ran all over him. But when you have 10 men, that's what you expect to do. I think RB Salzburg, the interesting thing is the next game in the next round in the match day 2 is against Sociedad. If they win that game, then there is a lot of potential for them to go through, because then there's going to be a double header between Benfica and Sociedad in match day 3 and 4, where one of those two teams is going to be out of contention for the Champions League progression to the next round. So next round, if Salzburg win, then I think they make it through. I really do, because then they've got some nice games after that.
Yeah, and then it works nicely for them, like you said. And when you've got these fixtures where it's kind of leaning up for them, anything can happen in the Champions League, like we've seen. But if they get 9 points or 10 points by match week 4, they're chilling. Even if they go for a second place position in the group, they can still go through. And it's because of their early performances in the group stage as well, which is great to see.
It's a major win. If they didn't win this, then it'd have been like, yeah, 4th, maybe 3rd. But
yeah,
they've got a chance now. I think I really do think they've got a chance.
Ali's commented, Manchester United were unfortunate yet outclassed at the same time. Such a topsy-turvy game. Yeah, it was a topsy-turvy game. And again, it's what happens in the Champions League. You expect to see some more fight from some teams in the Champions League, and we saw that from some players. And a game that we're going to go to in terms of fight is Galatasaray versus Copenhagen. And I was watching that earlier, and I was just like, I'm one of those of the opinion that I like watching the game, some games early and some games later, so you get to watch them in full detail, which is great. And Copenhagen, who I had the pleasure of actually visiting their stadium last week, or actually this week, Sunday. I went to the stadium on Sunday, which is cool. And then they were winning 2-0 against Galatasaray away from home in the cauldron of Istanbul. Then they get a second yellow for one of their players, and then Wilfried Zaha comes off the bench and he changes the game. He makes an amazing cross for Tete. Yes, that Tete that used to play for Leicester City, and he scored a fantastic volley to equalize to make it 2-2. And Copenhagen and FC Copenhagen and Galatasaray are actually ahead of Man United. So they're both teams that Manchester United will be chasing in this group. But Are we afraid of Galatasaray, Sani, from a Man United perspective, or are we more afraid of FC Copenhagen? What are we thinking, Sani?
I'd say Galatasaray. I mean, I know they were 2-0 down in this game, but they've got potency. Ziyech, Zaha, Mertens, Icardi. I know people say, "Oh, don't look at names," but any of those players are match winners on their day, and that's
Lucas
all you
Ferreira
need.
played good today as well.
Yeah, he did.
From
But like,
Arsenal.
all you need in the Champions League sometimes is just a match winner. Someone just create something out of nothing, and they have that. And I think, if anything, this is probably a bonus for us that we got. Well, it's normally like Copenhagen got a draw against Galatasaray, but if Copenhagen are winning 2-0 away, then they're not going to be an easy side as well.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping by the time we play then that we have a few more of our players back, and then we can give it a right go. But I mean, looking after this, if Galatasaray can come back 2-0 down, man, because anyone's games in the next round.
Absolutely. Danny, when I was out in Denmark, I was speaking to a couple of fans, FC Copenhagen fans, and they were telling me how in history for Scandinavian sides, when they're playing domestic football, they're playing great attacking, expansive, attractive football. But when they go into European Championship games, if they're going into the Conference League, the Europa League, the Champions League, they'll shrivel up. They'll be afraid of their opposition. But today it wasn't the case for FC Copenhagen. They really played out properly. Their manager, Jakob Niestrup, if I remember his name correctly, stuck to his morals. Is one of the youngest coaches in European football in the Champions League at 35 years of age. I think he's younger than Eddie Howe as well. So that's inspiration there for you, Danny, as well. But do you think that's a good sign from FC Copenhagen that they're sticking to their principles, sticking to their guns from a coaching perspective? What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, definitely, and I can see that their exact point. When you play against teams which you consider to be better than, you're going to want to play expansive football. You're going to always want to be on the front foot. When you go into a big competition, when you look at the names of Galatasaray, they may be a small club in terms of world football today, but the history behind the club and the history in Turkey and what they've done for the nation and what they've done for the Turkish football is so expansive. So going to a place like Istanbul, like, do you know what I mean? That's not an easy place to go to. And the other teams in the group are going to struggle to go there regardless of their name and regardless of their ability to play football. Yeah, from a tactical point of view, you've got to look at every game individually. So, you know, they would have looked at today, they would have tried to figure out that how are we going to break down this Galatasaray side? And they found ways to do it. Like we mentioned the double yellow and the sending off. It's never easy to go down to 10 men. And in that moment there, they could have, I think they've crumbled tactically a little bit. But what can you do? That's just one of the perks of having the yellow and red card system in place. I think both teams, and I think Man United as well, you mentioned, and looking for points from a Manchester point of view, do you go away to Galatasaray and away to Copenhagen and get points? That's the question I'd put back to you.
It's not as easy these days because a lot of Man United fans are still of that notion, oh, we're Man United, we'll do what we want. Well, not really. I mean, we did score 3 goals against Bayern Munich, but they put their foot off the gas. And a lot of FC Copenhagen fans and Galatasaray fans that I've spoken to, they both said, yeah, we could take you at Old Trafford and at home as well. And Sani, what would you have to say to that? Do you reckon it's not all doom and gloom from a Copenhagen or Galatasaray point of view against Man United? Or do you reckon we've got this? What do you think? You're on mute, Sani.
Thank you very much. I think it all depends on whether we get our players or not, because back or not from injury. Because if you look at it right now, anyone can come to Old Trafford and put a performance on. Because I know we had that great home record. We hadn't lost in like 20 plus games, I think it was. And then Brighton came and done what they've done. But any team coming to Old Trafford, there's no fortress there. There's no fear factor there. Anyone can come and get a result there. So that's what teams are going to be like coming to Old Trafford. But going there is going to be really hard for us. Everyone knows our away form isn't the best. So all of it rides on whether we get our players back. Because if we do, then Ten Hag can play the style of play that he wants to play, and then you can get a result. Whereas right now, if you're playing with like square pegs and round holes, it's not going to work, is it? I am worried. I am worried to a certain extent, because if we don't, like I said, if we don't get our players back, then it's not only is it hard in the Premier League, it's going to be hard in the Champions League as well. So, I think we've got Galatasaray next at home. That's a must win.
Definitely.
If we don't win that game, we're in trouble, I think.
This is the problem I have, though. Like, in terms of football coaching, at what point do you have to look at your tactics and go, right, I can't play the tactics I want to play. I've got to look at my squad and try and do something about it. I think it's stupid and it's naive coaches to go, oh, well, we're losing because I don't have the right players in the right positions. I think you've got to adapt to what you have in front of you. So from a Man United point of view, yeah, you might be missing X, Y, and Z players, but you still have 11 players on the pitch. You're not at a disadvantage. You've still got hundreds of millions of pounds worth of players. At what point does the coach give in and go, right, you know what? This is the team that we've got to deal with. Maybe we change tactically and we sit down as a group. You know, they're a full-time team. They're not like a semi-pro side where they've only got them on a Tuesday and Thursday evening. They can have them in for so many hours on the training pitch, in the boardroom, and go, you know what, for this game coming up, because we've got these players available, we might switch to a 3 at the back, or we might switch to a 4-3, a 4-4-2. We might go that. At what point does a Man United coach go, oh yeah, sorry guys, you know what, we haven't got Mason Mount, which we paid X amount of money for. That's it. We might as well just forfeit. Like,
it was the case on Saturday, wasn't it? We played a 4-4-2 diamond by playing 4 centre midfielders in different parts of the pitch, and we had Højlund and Rashford up front, and Rashford had the license to go wide and take on the fullback, and that was good for apparently 25 minutes in the game. I didn't watch the game myself, and I was just told that by a few fans who watched the game. And then today, for the first 25 minutes, we stood toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich in the way that we played, and Pellistri could have scored in that first 5 minutes as well. It could have been a great start, and that's when you played players in their right positions. And today, like Danny kind of said, everyone played in their correct position for Man United. Rashford off the left, Pellistri on the right, Bruno as the 10, Højlund up front. And we did stand toe-to-toe for periods of the game against Bayern Munich. It's just, like you said, is there times where Erik ten Hag has to compromise tactically? Is there times where he has to bite his own tongue and realize, you know what, we've just got to survive in this game? And that's something that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did really, really well for Man United. And that's why we had such a great away record, and especially why we always won at the Etihad. And we're yet to win at the Etihad under Erik ten Hag. I know he's only had that one game there, but it goes to show that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was amazing away from home because he was tactically flexible in terms of what he could do with his team. And that's why Scott McTominay was a big player for him, because he was the man that could actually play out of position for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, not as a number 8 or a box-to-box like he used to. As a number 4, he could sit back and just soak up the pressure, which was the case. Now, on to the last. George says on the chat, Copenhagen draw with Galatasaray was massive for us, for Man United. It really was, because if one of those teams got the win, if Copenhagen got the win, we would be chasing shadows for the rest of the match day 6. And normally by match day 5, you want to have it all wrapped up and done with, but it wasn't the case, unfortunately. Last game of today's game before we get on to Tuesday's matches is Sevilla versus RC Lens. And RC Lens drew 1-1 with Sevilla. Ivan Rakitic assisting Lucas Ocampos in the game. And Ivan Rakitic was the player to watch anyway. It's just the fact that Ivan Rakitic, as much as we talk about Luka Modric and we talk about some of these amazing older players in world football, Toni Kroos, Thomas Müller, Ivan Rakitic is still up there, isn't he, Danny, in terms of the quality that he's got, the fact that he's still working with Croatia in the 2022 World Cup, and especially winning the Europa League last season with Sevilla. Is Ivan Rakitic one of the most underrated ballers in the Champions League this season, Danny?
Has to be. I mean, he won't get the credit that he deserves because I think he's a little bit in that Modric shadow. But when you've got the same position, the same nation, and you're sitting behind someone that you've always been playing alongside, and they're getting all these credits, then you sort of fall back a little bit. If you look at Rakitic's career, I think a lot of people forget that he was, a former Barcelona player and wasn't
Champions
just
League winner, treble winner with them.
It wasn't even just on the fringe of that team as well. Was a consistent player in that side. You've got to look at his career and go, look, if you took away the name of Rakitic and showed someone that career path and the goals and the assists and the minutes that guy's played, you'd think that this guy is incredible. So I think maybe he doesn't really get the recognition he deserves. One of the most underrated players in the Champions League, maybe, but I think it's hard to define because he's one of those players that, if you look at his position now,
if you know ball, you're rating him.
Yeah.
If you don't know ball, you're not following Sevilla, you're just like, oh, it's Rakitic. But if you know ball, you're rating Ivan Rakitic. That's how I would say.
You look at his position now, and you do have to look at Rodri and look at what Rodri's doing for Man City, and go, this is the example of what a player in that style and shape should be looking at. So I think potential for that sort of title of one of the underrated players of the competition, but in terms of one of the best, you've got to look at Rodri and as the example and say he's nowhere near that level.
I would say after the Champions League final, scoring the winning goal, Rodri's no longer underrated. He is definitely rated as one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. And Sani, you were a big advocate of that last season as well. But in terms of Sevilla and Lens, Sani, I wanted to kind of ask you, out of the two, who are more than likely to qualify second in this group? Because I think Arsenal have definitely got a shoe in. Patrick said it in the chat as well that Arsenal look very good and they were class this evening with their 4-0 win. But RC Lens or Sevilla, do you reckon Sevilla will do another madness and finish third so they can go for the Europa League again, go to their trophy again? Or do you reckon RC Lens can pull something out of the hat in this group stage?
I wouldn't be shocked if Sevilla done that. Imagine that they just play in such a way and get the result such a way that it just works out that they miraculously finish third. I mean, if I'm Sevilla, I'm going to go for it in the Champions League because in the league, they've been very hit and miss.
Finished
in the Champions League
last season.
Yeah, and right now it hasn't been a good start for them as well. But in the Champions League, if you've got an opportunity to go far, just go for it. It's a favourable group for them as well. PSV, Lens, it's a nice group for Sevilla. It's not like they've got some big boys in there, but knowing them, they'll just finish third and do an absolute madness and face Danny's West Ham in the final.
Yeah, classic. It's going to happen.
And lose.
On penalties.
Sorry, just quickly. The only team in Conference League history to have 0 losses. That I just got to throw that out there. West Ham. No one else. Do you know the only team that has
shameless? He's shameless.
League history.
He's shameless.
Shout out Kurt Zuma. What a player he is now for West Ham. Now, what annoyed me today?
That stat will go down in history. Sorry to interrupt. That stat will go down in history. We have not lost a single game in Conference League history. Like, who else has had a European competition where they've not lost a single game? It's impossible. It's impossible.
I'm thinking of the Club World Cup. I'm trying to find a loophole here, like Santos against Chelsea back in 2013, but it's not the case because they played a few more Club World Cups. Now, what annoyed me the most, I saw a clip this week of Callum Wilson saying to Mikel Antonio, "Oh, I'm in the Champions League," and Mikel Antonio said, "Oh yeah, I'm a European champion," and he's like, and then Callum Wilson was like, "Oh yeah, I win the same on my PlayStation." I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, I know it's banter, but I'm just like, that's a poor comeback from Callum Wilson. So shame on you for disrespecting the UEFA Conference League there as well. But yeah, on to Tuesday's games. Danny, I know if you have to leave, you can drop out whenever.
See you later, guys. Have a good one.
Nicely done. See you later. So, Sani, we're just going to finish off with Tuesday's games as well. And we're going to talk about AC Milan versus Newcastle United. Unfortunately, there was a Newcastle United fan who got stabbed, and hopefully he's recovering well in Milan where he is. So hopefully that's all good. One team that I thought was going to shine this week was AC Milan. I thought they were going to come back after their embarrassing defeat against Inter Milan at the San Siro in the Serie A on the weekend to actually win against this Newcastle United, this inexperienced Newcastle United side who haven't been in the Champions League since 2003. But it finished 0-0, Sani, and I wanted to kind of know from your point of view, were AC Milan too relaxed in their attacking style of play? Because they had all these chances, all these amazing attackers, Giroud, Pulisic, Leao, Chukwueze, Ruben Loftus-Cheek was running past Longstaff and Tonali all game long. And they couldn't finish their chances. Do you know what happened with AC Milan? I think they just bottled it in the last minute. What do you think, Sani?
I just think they weren't clinical enough, like you said. I mean, if you're Rafael Leao and in the box trying to do a back heel when you've got a clear sight on goal.
That was hilarious.
That was hilarious. And it's just like, come on.
Balotelli-esque.
You're in the Champions League and you need a win. You only do this if you're like 3-4 up and you take a risk. You're like, screw it, why not? Not when you're 0-0 and you need a goal, especially after that hammering they took. 5 derby losses in 1 year, embarrassing. You want to have a performance and then you try and do that, like that. And then, you know, I don't think Pulisic was that good. RLC was a positive for them.
I'm not sure where Pulisic fits into the starting 11 personally. I don't get where he fits.
I don't know, because like the thing is, I was thinking this could be an interesting move for him and it might work, but I don't know, man. I really don't know. But it's only one match day. But this is a great result for Newcastle going away, you know, to Milan. You know, at the end of the day, people thought AC Milan were going to win this game. It wasn't the case. Good point for Newcastle away. And when they get to the home games, I can see them getting maximum points because of that crowd. So great point for Newcastle. You can't fault them.
Yeah, with Newcastle as well, being in the group of death, and we're going to be talking about the other two teams in the group just for the sake of consistency. PSG and Borussia Dortmund, two of my favourite teams to watch in the Champions League in any year because they play an exciting brand of football under whichever coach they have. And PSG are revitalised this season with a 2-0 win over Borussia Dortmund yesterday. Kylian Mbappe scoring a penalty, and Ashraf Hakimi with his twinkle toes finishing off in the second half as well. And I just wanted to kind of know from your point of view. I know Travis is watching the game today, but Travis said earlier this season that PSG could be a dark horse with their refreshed look, with Luis Enrique in the dugout for PSG. Are PSG a dark horse in the Champions League, or are they quarterfinal FC again, or rather 16 FC again? That's what they are.
They'll finish top of their group. I think that's what I thought. But I just think with PSG, I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know if you watched French League, but they've been pretty shit recently.
Yeah, I was watching the Lyon game as well, and I'm just like, it's a bit dull, really, from PSG.
And then they lost as well, and I'm just like, I don't know with PSG. The only thing they have is expectations are low because they don't have the superstars other than Mbappe, so they could perform. But I mean, Dembele, for example, that wasn't his best game, if we're being real.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect anything from Dortmund. I thought PSG were going to win this game 3-1. I was very convinced that Dortmund aren't the side of previous seasons, and I have a feeling
big loss for them losing Jude Bellingham as well.
I think I got a feeling they might finish bottom of this group just because I'm not convinced by Dortmund whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure they drew recently to Freiburg as well. So yeah, it's not good at the moment for Dortmund.
It's not looking good for Dortmund, especially when you expect their home form to be the one that would take them through. So if they're going to be relying on their free games...
Sorry, it was Heidenheim, by the way. They beat Freiburg on the weekend. My bad.
No, that's okay. It's all good. But yeah, like with Newcastle United, Borussia Dortmund will be relying upon their home form to actually take them through to these to the knockout stages of the Champions League. But with Borussia Dortmund, who are you looking for in terms of their inspiration? Marco Reus is always injured. We're lacking Jude Bellingham now as well. Donyell Malen is hit and miss. And I think Karim Adeyemi is too young to be the star boy, the poster boy for Borussia Dortmund to rely upon. And even yesterday, a couple of their attackers looked lost in the transition as well. But is there a player from Borussia Dortmund we should be watching out for to help actually get them through into the knockout? Or is it a bit too early to think about it?
It's a bit too early, but if I had to pick a player, it'd probably be Julian Brand, only because he had a very good season last year. It's probably his best season as a football player. If you look at his numbers, goals and assists were very, very good. Best season, I think, in terms of output. So great season for Julian Brand. Can he keep that up? He has to, because Marco Reus, he's not the same player he once was, which is a shame. And they don't have too much inspiration, I don't think, in that team. I mean, midfield of Emre Can, Sabitzer, Brandt. Brand's your most creative outlet there, and Can and Sabitzer, I'm not their biggest fan. So I don't know, man. I think Dortmund are going to find it tough this year in the Champions League. I really do.
I think with Sabitzer, he was great for Austria, but he has that free license in Rome. And annoyingly nowadays, a lot of midfielders just want to play as number 10 because they have that free license not to track back as much. They can press from the front. They don't have to work back as much. And when he was in this Dortmund side yesterday, he kind of did look like a deer in headlights, always be chasing like a Ugarte, and didn't know if he should stop and go with Mbappe, but didn't really work out for Sabitzer yesterday, and especially with Emre Can next to him. Emre Can isn't really the most comfortable midfielders to be alongside, but tough times ahead for Borussia Dortmund, I think, and that's going to be a great group to watch in the Champions League. PSG, Dortmund, Newcastle, and AC Milan all to watch as well. But one team I know you're loving this season, and I'm loving this season, is RB Leipzig, and they had a very convincing win yesterday against Young Boys, and that is because of their young boy, Xavi Simons, on loan. Benjamin Sesko obviously scored his first Champions League goal for RB Leipzig as well. Simakan and Schlager also scored. Schlager scored a decent goal, but Xavi Simons was the one, like Musiala today, who just ran the show, pulled the strings here, there, and everywhere on this AstroTurf pitch in Switzerland against Young Boys. But with RB Leipzig being in Manchester City's group, if I remember correctly,
a shame.
It's a shame, isn't it?
Again.
Always, they're gonna meet Erling Haaland again in the Champions League. But talk to me about Xavi Simons. We've heard a lot from a lot of people this season about Xavi Simons, and they all love him. But what does Xavi Simons do that stands apart? For me, it's his dribbling and his flair and his control on the ball. But is there anything that you've noticed from Xavi Simons this season that you're thinking, wow,
it's what you've said, but what I think is most impressive this season is his output. Because at the end of the day, this is the one thing that it all comes down to in football: end product. Vinicius Jr. was a player that was very, very skillful, but my biggest gripe with him always was end product. You need end product. That one season when, I think it was when Real Madrid won the Champions League, when they beat Liverpool in the final, I think he got like 40 plus goals and assists that season. And then the following season, he was very, very good as well. End product's the key. Xavi Simons has it all, but it's end product. And so far this season in Bundesliga, I think he's got 3 goals, 4 assists, or 4 goals, 3 assists. Either way, he got 7 goal contributions in the 4 games. That is crazy. And in the Champions League, he turned it up. But what is crazy with RB Leipzig is their bench. People can, shit on Werner as much as
They
want,
have a better bench than us. That's all I'm saying. RB
I think they have a
Leipzig.
better bench than most teams because people can say what they want about Werner, but bringing him off the bench, especially when teams are tired, great. Sesko on the bench. That boy was highly touted coming to Manchester United at one stage.
Last season.
Baumgartner, that's a very good player to come off the bench as well. They've got a very good bench. RB Leipzig will finish second in this group, and I don't think many teams will want to play him because they play a nice style of football.
Yeah, they play a very good brand of football as well. And they're one of those teams in the Champions League where you like watching the highlights of because they'll have a fun goal here or there. They'll have a good style of play. And Timo Werner, like we saw last season, is back at RB Leipzig and he's enjoying his football. This time he came off the bench, but him, Openda, Sesko, like you said, their attack is scary. And I think Yusuf Poulsen is still at the club as well. So for Yusuf Poulsen as a fourth choice striker, that's scary for RB Leipzig as well. Now we're on to the champions. We're on to Manchester City. It is one of those things where you're kind of like me in the way that you just sit back and you have to applaud Manchester City, not being a classic Man United fan of, oh, I hate Manchester City, you're this, you're that. And I'm just like,
I still hate him. I still hate him.
Still hate him. But
hate him. But you've got to appreciate good football, and that's exactly what they're about. I know it was 1-0, but it was just inevitable that they'd win.
Yeah,
Man City, especially at home. I think they've 34 games at home. I think I saw a stat. They're unbeaten in God knows how many games at home. That streak is going to continue. And let's be honest, they've got some players there that why we never signed Julian Alvarez when we had the option defeats me. I really don't get it. But what's even more crazy is they can bring off players like Jeremy Doku off the bench, which just goes to show how good they are as a squad. And they're going to make it, I think, to the final this year again. And I'm hoping another team beats them because if they go back to back, everything that Man United have achieved in Europe is slowly being disintegrated because that only means they got one less Champions League than us and they've gone back to back. So some uncomfortable conversations are going to be had if they win the Champions League. I can tell you that much, Hamza.
No, I agree with that. And talk to me about some of Manchester City's new players as well. We talked about Doku just now as well. Kovacic looks like a shoe-in for a comfortable player to be. But Mateus Nunes, who we both spoke about after he kind of destroyed Man United on match day 1 in the Premier League. And he looks like he's someone who's enjoying playing under Pep Guardiola as well. With Manchester City, a lot of times we've seen in the previous years that they normally have players that come in and they'll settle in for a year. They'll take their time settling into the style of play, the manager, the culture, everything. Second season, they're great. But it doesn't look like the case this season with some of the players that they've got. Like we said, Nunes, Gvardiol, Doku as well coming off the bench. They all seem quite comfortable now. And that's when you have the established team around you of Rodri, injured De Bruyne, who comes in, Julian De Bruyne. Alvarez was killing it yesterday. Are we seeing a much more established Manchester City, not just in the Premier League, but in European football as well?
1,000,000%. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Player profiles. If you pick the right profile of player that you need for your squad, it's going to be a bonus for you. And Nunez, Kovacic, Gvardiol, Doku, they fit the way Man City want to play, so they're perfect. Another thing, this year is the first season where Man City, I don't think, have that pressure because they've won the Champions League. There isn't any pressure for them.
There's no monkey on their back at all.
There isn't. But seasons before, you can say that the Champions League was the holy grail. They always had that at the back of their mind. So maybe players felt that pressure coming in. They've won league after league after league, but now they've won the Champions League. They have absolutely no problem whatsoever. There's such a feel-good factor at the club. And the thing now is, you're coming into a team that is so good with a manager that is at the peak of his powers that anyone that comes in, you have to perform now. And I think that's another added pressure for these players, which means they have to perform. Years before, I know you could say the same thing, but now it's like you're coming into a treble winning team. If you don't perform, you're going to go. So players need to perform. And that's why the players they've got are performing because they're just playing with freedom, and freedom does something different for players. Because when you play with freedom, you have no shackles on your back. You're so expressive. You have no pressure. You can do what you want. And there's some players, I know Grealish obviously wasn't playing. I completely get it. Why? But he's going to have problems getting back into this side with the way they're playing as well.
I mean, it's the whole João Cancelo thing, and we'll segue into Barcelona after this one. But it goes to show, last season before he moved, he's one of the best fullbacks in the world, let alone in the Champions League or in the Premier League. He's one of the best fullbacks in the world. And when he wasn't working with Pep Guardiola the way he wanted to, Pep was like, you know what, you're done, mate. Get out of here. And he was out of there. Bayern Munich on loan 6 months. Barcelona now on loan as well. Probably going to make it into a permanent deal unless it is already and I'm mistaken in my information. But it goes to show that Pep Guardiola does not mess about. And a lot of managers, when they don't mess about as well, they can get criticized. Eric Ten Hag, for example, getting criticized for banishing Jadon Sancho for what he said after the Arsenal game as well. But with Pep Guardiola, it's like, nah, he's ruthless. And when you have a manager who's ruthless in the press, ruthless in the changing room as well, ruthless on the pitch, on the touchline, that's what gets you results. And when you have someone who's ruling like an iron fist with Pep Guardiola, it's working insane, which is incredible. It's insane how crazy it is with Pep Guardiola. George has mentioned Madrid our only hope, or Bayern could grow into the competition. Yeah, another question on Man City. Who are Man City's biggest challenges in the Champions League, Sonny?
I'd love an Arsenal-Manchester City semi-final in the Champions League. I'd love that.
That'd be crazy.
But I think the biggest challenges... I think it's the team you're going to speak about next.
Barcelona.
Potentially, only because I don't fancy Real Madrid to go far in the Champions League. I think they're missing a striker badly. Bayern Munich, my issue with Bayern Munich is their midfield. I think a Goretzka Kimmich double pivot, I just don't think it works. I just don't think. Hence why Tuchel wanted Palhinha really badly. I think Palhinha in that team would have been perfect, but they're going to struggle, I think. And Barca, the only thing that holds Barca is Xavi a good enough manager to perform when the chips are down? Because I mean, it's a nice segue really, because I know you're going to talk about Barcelona next. But the 1-5-0 against Antwerp, no one gave Antwerp a shout. But they haven't made it to the knockout stage of the competition for 2 seasons. So now they've got a favourable group. They'll do that. Then it's a case of, can they do it on the biggest stage when the pressure's on them? Because let's be honest, even when Messi was there, after they won the treble, they were having some really bad losses in Europe. I mean,
the Liverpool one especially.
Liverpool losing 3-0 away at Juventus after that comeback against PSG. But let's be honest, away from PSG, they got smashed.
Yeah. The Roma one as well.
Roma. They've had some bad losses, so they are due
Europa League last
run.
Season as well.
Yeah, they're due a big run, and João Felix, I think, is a good signing for them. I mean, I know people saying at Chelsea wasn't the best, but good player. So I'm hoping Barca.
George says they don't need a striker at Real Madrid. They've got Jude. Jude can play anywhere. Put 9 on the back for Jude, and Jude will play as a number 9 as well. But he can play anywhere, Jude Bellingham, that boy. But let's talk about João Felix at Barcelona, winning convincingly 5-0 against Royal Antwerp FC. João Felix looks like he's back to his best. And back to his best is not at Atletico Madrid. It's not at Portugal. It's when he was at Benfica in that Europa League campaign where he had Seferovic as the number 9. He had a number 9 to play off. And with João Felix not playing as a trequartista, not playing as a second forward. No, he's playing as a second forward. And that's what works well for João Felix. And that's how we saw the best out of him yesterday. And that's why he's getting the hearts of Barcelona fans around the world in terms of, oh yeah, he's a great player, let's sign him permanently. And that was obviously his first game in the Champions League. And that was Barcelona's biggest win in the Champions League since their 6-1 victory against PSG in 2017. So Felix scoring 2, Gavi scoring, Lewandowski and an own goal by Batil from Royal Antwerp FC. Like you said about Xavi, we'll stick with João Felix and we'll go back to Xavi as well, Sani. With João Felix, is that where we see the best of players? And we heard from Danny earlier in terms of sometimes the players have to kind of manage themselves. But when he's playing with Robert Lewandowski, there's no real better striker in world football that you can learn from in terms of running off, in terms of combination play, in terms of passages of playing. With Barcelona, with their group, it does look fairly easy for them. Don't you think, Sonny?
Well, 1,000,000%. They've got really nice midfield as well. De Jong, Gundogan, Gavi. That's a very nice midfield. Obviously, we know with Pedri, he has his issues, but that's a very, very good midfield. And when you have a striker, like you said, with Lewandowski, you can play off, it's perfect. And he's come into an environment where there's no stress. They play quite an expansive style of play as opposed to Atletico Madrid, which is very, very defensive. Chelsea was a very hit and miss because it could have worked. It might not have worked. I mean, it would have been very hard for any player to have smashed it at Chelsea during their half season, especially that they had.
And so they're still struggling now at the beginning of their season.
I think the issue with João Felix was when he went to Atletico Madrid, it was the price tag. Everyone expected him to be a certain player, but he's not that sort of talisman, I don't think. I think he's a player where he needs someone in front of him and he can do all the work behind him. But Barcelona, they could have a nice run if the chips fall nicely for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the final game that we're talking about, we've got 2 games actually. One game to talk about, we'll talk about this one and then we'll talk about the last one, because the last one is a very fun game to talk about. Celtic are back in the Champions League once again, and it looks like they're kind of already on their way out after losing 2-0 away to Feyenoord. And I don't want to be too harsh on them being match day one, but Celtic and Rangers, they don't tend to do well in the Champions League, besides after 2010 era when Rangers and Celtic were kind of competing. But 2-0 away from home, they're losing. Stengs scored, and I think with Stengs, he's just one of their best performers for Feyenoord as well. He's a player I'm really looking forward to watching. But with Celtic losing Ange Postecoglou as well, losing their identity, going back to Brendan Rodgers as manager, are we expecting much from Celtic this season in the Champions League, Sani? Or is it going to be, you're kind of here making up the numbers, unfortunately?
I like Celtic, but no, I can't see them. They had to win this game, but Feyenoord have been ripping it up in Eredivisie. I think they scored something like 15 goals in the last 4 games that they've had. It's stupid. Yeah. They're not even top of the league, but if you look at their goal difference, they've scored the most goals. So, listen, I wasn't expecting Celtic to win this game. And I mean, with their group as well, Lazio and Atletico Madrid, this was a must-win for Celtic. But the best they could hope for now is Europa League, but I don't think they're finishing the Europa League. So it's another season for Celtic where they're going to look to dominate the domestic scene.
I thought with Feyenoord, I think they're winning the league last season as well in the Dutch Championship as well. They're going to be expected to challenge for that second position in the group against Atletico Madrid and against Lazio. So we're going to expect more from Feyenoord. But I thought they almost had it. I thought they had the 3 points Atletico Madrid until a last-minute goal from Providel for Lazio. And for people who haven't watched it or seen it yet, where have you been the last 24 hours? I mean, a goalkeeper scored a last-minute equalizer, match week 1 of the Champions League for Lazio. The city of Rome, the blue side of Rome, was elated, and Atletico Madrid were heartbroken because they had so many chances, and they were playing more of an attacking style of play than we've recently seen in the Champions League, because I think they knew that Lazio were there for the taking, but evidently not. Luis Alberto had a really good game for Lazio. They've recently signed Daichi Kamada, and Sergio Milinkovic-Savic has left, and Lazio finished second in Serie A last season. But with Atletico Madrid, Sani, I need to ask you, are we going to see one more great season of Diego Simeone with the style of play that he's going to play? He's playing a lot more front-facing football this season so far, or is it going to be same old in European football?
Well, it kind of depends. I was thinking that was the case until the weekend result where they lost 3-0 away to Valencia, which is very, very embarrassing. Considering the talk of Atletico Madrid challenging this season, for them to go away and lose 3-0 to Valencia is very embarrassing. This game itself, I thought they were going to win, but if you don't take your chances, you will get punished in the Champions League. They should finish top of this group, though. They have got a nice group, Feyenoord, Celtic, and Lazio. I mean, it's not the worst point to get, let's be honest. I know it was a last minute with a Didier Drogba-esque header, but away from home, it's not the
celebration was uncanny as well.
Yeah, I can't see them dropping any points at home. So I think they'll get 9 points at home, and then it's just a case of, can they go to Celtic and get a win? I think so. And then Feyenoord, can they get a win there? I mean, they'd be happy with a draw. They'll be fine, Atletico. Will they make a deep run? I don't know. I hope, because Atletico are just that dogged team. You just want to see you do well, but let's see. But I mean, there's a team you didn't mention, a game that you haven't mentioned, and that is Shakhtar Donetsk Porto, which I thought was quite a good game as well. I mean, it's a perfect.
Playing in Hamburg, weren't they, Shakhtar?
Yeah, because obviously we all know what's happening in the Ukraine, but it's a perfect group for Barcelona. It really is. Antwerp, they're not going to give anything for Barcelona. They're not going to cause any damage. Shakhtar Donetsk, they're not the team of a couple of seasons ago. Well, a couple of seasons, like 10 years ago, when they had like Tyson, when Willian was there, Fred. They had like decent players, and now I couldn't even name any of their players. I mean, it's not like they got Mudryk there, for example. So, they're struggling. And then Porto, I mean, I went to a Porto Inter Milan game last season. They were decent.
Your vlog was cold, by the way. For anyone who hasn't followed Sani, by the way, he does vlogs, and he does it for the entertainment factor, unlike me for the information factor. He goes for it, and he'll do random times of the year to go watch games. And his behind-the-scenes story was crazy. So if you haven't seen that, I know it's a year ago, but go and watch that video. That was a cold vlog of Inter Milan versus Porto. Sorry, carry on.
It's all right, but thank you. But they should have won that game. They had so many chances, and if it wasn't for Onana, they would have been in the quarterfinals of Champions League. But yeah, they'll do well. But I think it's been
so Remy's still doing bits for them as well. I like Remy. He's a player that I thought should have moved to a bigger club, respectively, in European football, but clearly is happy at Porto, and clearly no one's really going for him as well. But it's the first time since the 2015 season that Porto have actually won their first game in the Champions League group stage as well, and it goes to show that Porto are going to be vying for that second position against Barcelona, who are probably going to most likely get the first position as well. But yeah, just to wrap up the stream before we go, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Sonny, I need to get 2 heroes and 2 villains from this week's match week in the Champions League. So from any of the games, who are your 2 heroes and 2 villains for this week?
Okay, so the first hero has to be Felix because let's be honest, he hasn't had it easy. People were doubting whether he was a star boy, very good player. And the second one, I can't pronounce his name, but it's the Lazio keeper. What an amazing story. Providel, right? Providel, he's rose to prominence here because that is an absolute fantastic header to save Lazio. And then 2 villains. Interesting. That's a tough one. I mean, Onana, but I'm not gonna say Onana because that is harsh. That's a good question, Hamza. That is a good question. I'm trying to think. I'm going to say the player that got sent off for Copenhagen.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but he's cost them 3 points, to be honest.
I'm going to throw Rafael Leao into the works for that stupid.
And yeah, Rafael Leao, I forgot about him as well. Who can forget that stupid back heel? Because even afterwards, he wasn't really pressing that much as well.
Yeah.
He was very,
he's playing like a luxury winger with his new contract.
You're not Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, like Ronaldo, when he would track back, but even when he didn't, you know for a fact he's getting you a goal or an assist or something. Leao isn't at that level yet, so come on, mate.
Chat, if there's anyone who you would think would be a hero or villain, just let us know, and we'll have to talk about them on the next time of the match week when there's a Champions League as well. Hopefully, I'll be able to go to a couple more Champions League games this season at home for Manchester United. Hopefully, I'll be able to see SANI at a couple of Manchester United games as well this season. Everyone, thank you very much for watching our live stream. We are going to be consistent with it over the season. I've asked quite a lot of people to join, so hopefully they'll be friendly enough to join. SANI, thank you very much for your time. Danny, thanks very much for earlier coming on. We appreciate it. But yeah, everyone follow SANI, the sports guy, that sports guy on YouTube. I'm going to leave his description in the link below as well. One more in the chat. George says, didn't watch the game, but Antonio Silva for Benfica ruined their game plan. Another villain as well. He's out because it's a straight red. He's out for the next 2 games as well for Benfica. So their best centre back is out. Great shout.
And they've got into Milan next as well.
Fun times with Benfica ahead. Fun times in the Champions League ahead as well. So hopefully we've got more games coming up and more games to go to. But yeah, everyone, thank you very much for watching our stream. Take care, and we'll see you later. Bye.